Good morning. Welcome to Walking Boxing. It is Monday, March 17th, 2025, and a very cool one this morning it is. I think we might just starting to see the downturn in weather, which is good. It's very, very welcomed. It's good to get the hoodie back on. We'll have the beanie back on soon too and complain about how cold it is. But anyway, the weekend, look, it wasn't a massive weekend for boxing, was it? There's a couple of events on. Probably the most, or the one closest to home for us was probably TJ Doheny over in Liverpool against Nick Ball. Nick Ball getting the stoppage in between rounds, and it was between the 9th and 10th rounds. Yeah, look, he's always pretty tricky, isn't he, TJ Doheny? But there was, as always, seems to be some controversy. The kick after the first round. Look, you got to wonder what would have happened if that had been on the other foot, excuse the pun. There had been TJ Doheny that had kicked Nick Ball after the first round. There probably would have been a riot in the crowd. I think there was 11,000 people or something there. And the referee, I think he actually admonished Tony Del Vecchio more than he did Nick Ball. Tony Del Vecchio got up on, I hope I pronounced that right by the way, Tony Del Vecchio jumped up on the ring and was having a go at the referee for not doing anything, basically. And he was told to sit down and shut up and mind his own business. So it was just bizarre. I mean, what was a very uneventful first round. Not much happened at all, did it? And then, you had Nick Ball on the outside looking to get on the inside, and you had TJ Doheny, who always sort of seems to fight that way. He's a very cautious fighter on the outside, that southpaw stance. Was just looking to probably just survive those early rounds and wasn't really willing to engage. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, in 12-round fights, it happens a lot where a fighter will not engage for the first couple just to see what his opponent's got and maybe take a little bit of sting out of the contest. But at the end of the round, it's almost like he had him in a headlock, wasn't it? Or a headlock of sorts. It wasn't a full-on headlock, but he did have his head under his arm. And Nick Ball just sort of without provocation let the leg go. And I'm not sure whether TJ was told to maybe milk it a little bit because he went down, of course, but it seemed like a pretty solid kick. And then, I think it was actually in his corner as well, which is why Tony Vecchio. So Michael Tamura in the corner as well, and his trainer, whose name escapes me at the moment. But I'm just looking at a heap of cars. There's a heap of ducks on the road. Jeez, there's about 50 of them, and all the cars are slowing down, as they should. Then look, all hell could have potentially broken loose. I thought TJ Doheny, he's a gentleman, so he just sort of got on with the job. Tony Del Vecchio was probably the most fiery one in the corner. He had his say. Mike would have certainly had his say, but down from the ring apron. And, the 11,000 people in attendance really couldn't see the fuss in the whole thing. So, but anyway, the fight went on. I thought TJ Doheny did a good job just surviving the fight. I don't think at any stage he was really in a position to win the fight. Seems to have become a bit of his MO these days. And look, credit to, first of all, Mike Altamura for getting him these fights. Mike Altamura, very, very unsung member of the boxing community in Australia, and he's gotten TJ Doheny 2 world title fights in the last 12 months, one against Inoue and now one against Nick Ball, coming off the loss to Inoue, by the way. So that shows what the type of manager Mike Altamura is. He's gotten his fighter coming off a stoppage loss in a world title fight, another world title shot. So, but yeah, as I said, he was pretty much in survival mode from probably the 4th or 5th round on, if not earlier. Nick Ball, he's got the reputation of being a little bit of a wrecking ball. I'm going to be honest, I don't really see it. He's tough, he's rugged, but just in my opinion, I've copped a little bit lately for being a little bit overcritical of some fighters, but limited for me. I don't think he moves his head a lot. He comes sort of straight ahead. He telegraphs his punches. I think, afterwards he's calling out Naoya Inoue. Oh, geez, I think this is a classic case of be really careful what you wish for. They did exchange some posts or tweets or whatever the hell it is afterwards on social media, the two, which is unusual from Naoya Inoue. I don't think it was obviously anything spiteful, but it was just a little bit of banter. And Nick Ball's up for the fight. he wants to fight with Naoya Inoue, but look, I don't know. Look, sometimes it's hard to gauge a fighter's credentials based on a fight with someone that, and probably a little bit like Ford and who else was it, the Ford, who weren't really that interested in engaging with him, pretty much ran from him the whole fight. It's hard to gauge what he's like or what sort of fighter he is, because he hasn't had those fighters that really want to trade with him and see what sort of skills he's got. They've all sort of ran from him and made him look pretty good. I'm not sure. It's a really hard one to really make any sense of whether he's going to be in a position to challenge Naoya Inoue, because Naoya Inoue is, of course, not going to run from him. He's going to stand in front of him and draw him on the punches, and then we'll see what Nick Ball's got. But as I said, I admire Nick Ball, just like any world champion. As I said, he's tough, he's rugged, but the fact that he doesn't move his head telegraphs his punch. I just think Naoya Inoue will just be waiting there for him to come in, and we'll just line him up with shots, and could be a good night. The only thing that maybe could give Nick Ball a bit more of a chance of maybe just hanging with Naoya Inoue for a while and maybe seeing what happens and getting him into those later rounds, is the fact he's the bigger guy. Now, he's actually shorter than Naoya Inoue, by the way, but he's a bigger man, very, very stocky, and has fought at featherweight his whole career. Naoya Inoue has fought a lot lower than that, of course. And that's probably the only thing I can see that gives Nick Ball maybe a chance. And if he does hang in there and doesn't get knocked out early or the mid rounds, and he takes it into the later rounds, maybe we could see Naoya Inoue start to tire a little bit and gas, and Nick Ball come over the top of him. But just based on yesterday, again, it's hard when you've got an opponent who doesn't really engage and show us or give us an indication of what Nick Ball can show us. I just think, yeah, he's not going to be able to successfully challenge Naoya Inoue. And Frank Warren, his promoter, actually said after the fight that they're not going to wait for Inoue, because it looks like it will be probably be this time next year before that we actually get that fight. There has been maybe some rumours that they might fight in Riyadh at the end of the year, but that looks more and more like MJ, Merajon Akam, whatever his name is, you know who I'm talking about. We'll call him MJ. That's looking like Saudi Arabia at the end of the year. In the meantime, he's fighting, this is in a way I'm talking about, he's fighting Cardenas in Las Vegas on a Sunday, which is a little unusual. Of course, it's Riyadh weekend, or Riyadh season. That's part of the weekend. So we've got Canelo on the Saturday night, we've got Garcia and Haney on the Friday night, and rounding it off with Inoue on the Sunday night. So I suppose you could probably get away with it in a place like Las Vegas. It's days and times do not exist in Las Vegas. It's just one big time warp, all just mixed into one. There's no windows in the casinos. It's like you may as well not have a watch, because whatever time of day it is, you would never clue. So, all right, so that's on Sunday, May the 4th, that is. And I'm waiting for all the May the 4th jokes to come, as they do every year. So what else? Oh, yes, Edgar Berlanga. What the hell was that? This is the guy that pumps himself up. He flexes the muscles. Looks like he's even got a few more tats. Goes in there and fights Jonathan Gonzalez Ortiz on 6 weeks' notice. So, I mean, it was enough time to get ready. But, geez, fair income. They've even got the cops slowing down to have a look. Yes, I want a video cameras. Just relax, boys. It's a bit unusual, actually, to see the cops around this time of the morning. But anyway, yeah, Berlanga blew away Jonathan Gonzalez Ortiz. Now, there was a little bit made about the physical condition of, I'm going to call him Gonzalez, I'm going to call him Ortiz. We'll call him Ortiz, about the physical appearance. Now, apparently he was in jail. That's why he hadn't fought for a long time, and actually ballooned over 300 pounds, which I think is about, about 140 kilos, 130, 140 kilos. That's a lot of weight. And it was a result of getting down. So it's a credit to him to have actually gotten down in weight. Good on him. But he did look like he'd had a baby or something, hadn't he, afterwards? But yeah, look, total mismatch. I didn't actually know it when I had a look at the fight the other day, but apparently he was an Olympian back in 2008, which is what, 17 years ago. So a long time, but look, it was what a mismatch. And look, it went the way it should have with Berlanga totally destroying him in one round. But my big question is, you've got Edgar Berlanga. I know there's a little mini feud with him and Eddie Hearn. It was the last fight of the contract. I get that, and Eddie Hearn might have just been sort of making a point by saying, well, if you're going to badmouth me in the press and say that this is it for you and you're going to be a free agent, well, why am I going to go out of my way to spend money on you and put you in a main event and invest in you when this is the way you act? So I sort of get that, but surely if it's a televised event, we've got to do better than that. You cannot have a guy the stature of Edgar Berlanga co-main event and they get an opponent like that. And with 6 weeks notice or 8 weeks, whatever it was, before they started looking at opponents for the fight, surely they could have come up with someone better. That was an absolute embarrassment, and that probably shouldn't have even been on a televised part of the card. It should have been earlier in the day. It was just embarrassing, and Eddie Hearn, surprised. I'm surprised he actually let that fight go ahead, because regardless of everything that's going on between the two, I think he's still got a bit of pride in his organisation. And yeah, that didn't do his reputation, I wouldn't have thought, or his brand any good by putting that fight on. And afterwards, Edgar Berlanga, as expected, shouted out to Caleb Plant and actually got the crowd going with his little chant going about Caleb Plant. Just a classless guy, he really is. I mean, this is a guy who pretty much didn't win a round against Canelo Alvarez, then went on his little victory tour, and then did a bit of a hissy fit because he wasn't the main event in this fight, talking it tough. And I mean, the guy didn't even make weight. I mean, he deserves no respect. I know he said he had the flu, came in a couple of pounds over, which is what, nearly a kilo. But just yeah, look, I don't know how it is after a fight like that, where you know you can jump on TV, you can flex some muscles, you can start talking smack after you've just knocked out a guy who shouldn't have even been anywhere near a ring. And it's like he's just knocked out Canelo beforehand and flexes the muscles. I don't understand it. It sort of reminds me a little bit of a lot of the Aussies back here, to be honest. A lot of the shows they put on here, and they bring out a Thai or a Fijian or an Indonesian or something. They knock them out in one round and jump on the top ropes and do backflips and carry on and you know, say they're going to take on the world. That's what it sort of reminded me of. Anyway, but Edgar Berlanga, yeah, he wants the Caleb Plant fight. He wants a potential fight, maybe even with Munguia. Munguia has obviously got to get his career back on track. Some okay fights at super middleweight. The problem is that Canelo's already gone through them all. Maybe Mbili and Pacheco are the only sort of two left worth even looking at, and all the rest are just going to have to fight amongst themselves. And they can talk about rematches with Canelo all they want. It's not going to happen. Canelo very rarely goes back and gives someone an opportunity in a rematch, especially when he's got guys like Bivol, Benavides, Crawford coming up after Skull. So you wouldn't have thought that, and especially with Berlanga, it's not like he put in a spirited effort last time and lost an honourable decision, was it? I mean, and Caleb Plant was knocked out by Canelo. Yeah, none of these guys are getting rematches with him, unfortunately. Well, not unfortunately, fortunately, to be honest, because neither of those fights were exciting at all. And I was actually at the Berlanga fight, and it wasn't a great fight at all. Now, it is also fight week. It is George Kambosos and Yordan. Now, I'll go through the fights a little more closely later in the week as we do a bit of a preview, but it's this Saturday night, March 22nd, and still not a lot of fanfare about this fight. Now, they got Dord himself the other day to do a little bit of a promo clip, trying to get a bit of momentum behind it, but it sort of fell a little bit flat, if I'm being honest. George, as always, has done a great job trying to talk it up, and his dad, and I think they've had to pull out all stops on this event to get people remotely interested, and unfortunately, I've got to say, it hasn't worked. Every sort of boxing sort of person I know really couldn't care less, and it's a shame. They could have done a lot better for an opponent, I reckon, for George Kambosos. And the issue is, and I don't like to say it, but in Australian boxing, as I just said before, so many Indonesians and Fijians and Thais and all that have been brought out here and just to the slaughter, that when you put an Indonesian on a fight post and saying this is a massive event, the fight fans out there have been conditioned to think that, you know, the Indonesians and Thais and that just cannon fodder. And I know it's not the case with Yordan, I get it. I mean, he's actually a very, very good fighter, or was a very, very good fighter. But unfortunately, we've been conditioned into not just thinking, but knowing that when they bring these guys out, they just come over to get knocked down. And so many promoters have just bought out these fighters from overseas and just pretty much sacrificed them in front of 1,000 sort of Aussies in attendance, and it hasn't done the sport any good at all, in my opinion. And I just think in this case, bringing out as good as he's been and may still be, Yordan, Indonesian. A lot of people saying, "Hang on, he's fighting in Indonesian," and that's unfair on him, I know, but that's just the way Aussie boxing fans have been conditioned, and that's why, in my opinion, it's been a really tough sell. But yeah, apparently the ticket sales aren't going well. They might pick up a little bit during the week. Who knows? A lot of people buy tickets at the last minute, but geez, I'm glad they're not relying on pay-per-view money here, because I don't think they'd be sort of covering the cost. So anyway, let's hope I'm wrong. Let's hope they get a crowd there on Saturday night. It's a really good undercard to it, or on it. Sky Nicholson, Tiara Brown, very, very underrated fight in the scheme of the female boxing. Sky Nicholson, credit to her, in my opinion, finally facing a credible fighter. I think it's the first one she's faced, but credit to her for giving Tiara Brown an opportunity. She's a good fighter, Tiara. She's tough and hard. And as I said, I take my hat off to Sky for taking the challenge. And then on the other card, similar with Shanika Johnson taking on Nina Hughes. She lost, Nina Hughes lost a very disputed decision to Shanika Johnson last year. I don't think Lieutenant Dan will be wheeled back out for this one. But yeah, Shanika Johnson getting the win last year after initially being deemed the loser and losing that world title. It was overturned, not by Lieutenant Dan. It wasn't his decision to overturn the result, but he was the one that actually got it wrong in the first place. So not a good legacy for Lieutenant Dan. But so credit to Shanika for giving Nina Hughes another opportunity. So that'll be good. And then the odd one is Teramona Jr. Now he's on the card, but still hasn't had an opponent listed on BoxRec. Now I'm not sure if I've missed it on social media or whatever. I don't know whether it has been announced, but on BoxRec as of this morning, I double checked before I went on the walk this morning just to make sure nothing had been added, and there's no one there. So is he fighting? Is he not fighting? Surely they've had plenty of time to get him an opponent. When did he last fight? January the 8th on the Opataya and the Ika card. So it's at over 2 months ago. So yeah, not sure what's happening with that one, but I'll preview that whole card a little bit later in the week. So guys, that's probably going to do it again. I know it's not the most entertaining episode this morning, but you can only talk about what's actually happening, and this early in the week, nothing. So at least we're not talking about footy anyway. Yeah, we'll look forward or look ahead in that as well. So guys, have a great Monday, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.